Hello and welcome. I'm Dr. Adam Dorsey, a psychologist in Silicon Valley and the host of Super Psyched, a podcast dedicated to supercharging your life. Each episode contains fun, high-quality interviews with experts looking at psychology from all angles. Super Psyched is your tool to get more of what you want in your life and less of what you don't. Flirting. Could it be an important skill for us to cultivate? My guest says yes, no matter what our station in life. And when you hear his definition, you'll learn that it's not just about sex, dating, or romance. It can be done in friendly contexts and can cultivate friendships as well. Benjamin Camras is a flirt coach, and he unpacks what flirting is, why it's important, and how to do it. Of course, many of his clients are people who are looking for love, but as you'll hear, it's not solely a skill reserved for them alone. So listen in as Benjamin and I talk about flirting and how you might be able to improve your abilities to do it. Benjamin Camras, welcome to Super Psyched.
Hi, Adam. Very excited and thrilled to be here and talk about one of my favorite things in the world, flirting.
And your face lights up for the listeners who can't see it. Boy, that is one of the most sunshiny faces I can imagine. And here I go, sounding like a flirt myself. Let's define flirting in perhaps the various ways it might be used, common parlance, as well as the way that you might define it.
Sure. I'll start with how I define flirting. And I define flirting as the authentic expression of interest in the present moment without expectation, with the purpose of making a connection. And I use that definition and that framework of flirting because it brings it back to its most basic principle, and that is about making a connection. And I also like working with that terminology because I think it starts to help people get out of their heads. So they're not trying to think their way through it, analyze their way through it. It becomes more about a feeling, more about that connection. So that is how I frame the flirt.
And I think it's a great definition because it doesn't necessarily mean sexual interest the way we tend to think of it. And I'm guessing you're flirting all day and in various capacities, but it doesn't mean that you'd want to necessarily get in bed with these people. Say it again because it's so good.
It is the authentic expression of interest in the present moment without expectation to form a connection, to build a connection, to make a connection. It's about truly seeing somebody and then seeing yourselves through their eyes as well a little bit without that expectation, without that intent, without that overt expression of romantic interest or sexual interest. Hey, I find you so hot kind of thing. Like that is a very, I know my definition isn't the juiciest. People sometimes, well, I want to flirt with my crush or something like that. Well, then my question back to them is, do they know you? Do you know them? Why would you start the flirt with, hey, you're so hot? Why?
Exactly. Like there are these really, really cheesy lines, you must be a mirror because I can see me in you, or something stupid like that. These do not create or sustain real connection.
No.
But you are suggesting the word connection, and that's a really important word to me. I just published a book all about the 4 ways we connect, and one of them is interpersonally. And you are suggesting that this is a way of conveying authentic interest for the sake of connection. And I'm totally intrigued.
If you can start the flirt from that point, well, then you can layer and build it from there. So as you're starting to date someone or you're in a relationship, short term, like you're just starting out, or long term, of course, bring the flirt in various ways. It's always going to be about connection. But if you want to express a more sexual experience with the flirt, allow the flirt to be foreplay, then do that. But this is like, you then get to open up the flirt and have it be whatever experience you want to be, specific to the connection that you're already in, or your relationship, or the dynamics you're exploring, or maybe where you're at. You're at a coffee shop and you see someone that is like sort of catching your eye kind of thing. Well, you're not going to go like from 0 to 100, right? You don't even know their name.
Hell no.
Find out a little bit about them first. Just build that consent, establish boundaries, start making your way, feeling your way into that connection. See them for who they are, not who you want them to be, who you think they could be or should be. Oftentimes our minds go to, you think someone is attractive, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh gosh, I wonder what it'd be like for that first date, or what it could be like to kiss them, or more. and you don't even know their name. I think we need to get away from this really objectifying people that we don't even know and just establish a connection first and foremost. And for a lot of people, that's difficult. And I strongly believe we need more connection in the world. I think there's a lot of lonely people. I think there's a lot of isolation. I think there's a lot of us struggling with our mental health, anxiety, depression, and more. And I think one remedy, antidote, solution to all of that is connection.
I couldn't agree more. And I think the flirt is just such a nice way of saying, is there something here?
Yeah.
I almost wish I had a PET scan of my brain right now because it's going all kinds of places in terms of the relevance of this idea. And I'm thinking about some research that I encountered after the loss of a pet. And one of the pieces of research suggested that people who walk dogs are far more likely to be engaged by others because of the fact they got a dog. And the dog is actually acting in some ways as a proxy for a flirt. The dog has no idea. He's no compunctions about saying hello, whereas we do. And the thing that we seem to fear the most, which is authentic connection and reaching out, is the thing we also paradoxically fear the most because of the possibility of rejection. And to your point, we are at a place where we are more electronically connected than we've ever been, but we are more interpersonally disconnected, and loneliness is at an all-time high. And you're suggesting a remedy. Why else might flirting and being coached on how to flirt be important?
Because I give a lot of dating advice as well. And I say how you date and how you flirt is how you live your life, because it's a very much a mirror for our own inner world and what's going on with us. And whether you're dating, you're making connections, you're in relationships with friends, family, platonic, romantic, how you connect and form relationships is in many ways how you live your life. Like, this is really, really important. And so how you show up for others and how you show up for yourself to make a connection, you can then transfer all those skills into your career, into your education, into your hobbies, interests, everything. And so I just feel like, what is going to come up for you? Is it that fear of being rejected? What's that internal monologue like? Is it that, oh, I'm too awkward or weird? I hear that a lot. It's, oh, like, how could they ever like me? You know, how could someone see something good or positive in me? Like, what's coming up? Or you're just super nervous and you're anxious and that's holding you back. So why not work through that through the framework of the flirt? Like, what a fun, incredible way to do that. I'm also a yoga teacher. And so unknowingly, to a lot of people listening and watching, teach yoga through the flirt as well, as a practice of mindfulness and as a practice of connection. So it's a very holistic approach for people to really embody their own healing. Self-awareness is only going to get you so far. You don't necessarily need more self-awareness and more skills and more tools and more education, right? It's sort of like the person that has a library of self-help books, but doesn't actually do anything with it.
And yet it's been my experience that if we do have more tools and we do something with them, we can build a lot more amazing things.
Yeah.
But to your point, when there's a chasm between the knowledge and the use, we got nothing. We've just got junk. And I agree with you. Common sense is not necessarily common practice. When we know something, but we don't do something, we also got sometimes even less than nothing because we think we know this thing, except we're not using that thing. And it's so important to use said tools. I'm fascinated by the idea of integrating yoga and flirting, as you say, in a very holistic manner. Can you tell me how that works?
Yeah. So the way I teach yoga is that it's a practice of being rather than doing. I ask my students to be more, do less. I tell them there's nothing you need to do for these next 60 minutes. I'm only asking you to be and to receive the benefits of your practice. What's coming up for you? How do you want to move? How do you want to show up today? How do you ultimately want to connect to yourself in this moment? How do you want to connect to others as we're unifying our breath, as we're synchronizing in many ways our movements together with me? And then just moving through that. And what's coming up is, it's like, are you comparing yourself to the other students? Oh God, I wish I could do that. Or, oh, comparing yourself to yourself. I was so much better at this last week. What is wrong with me today? We're so often critical and negative of ourselves and feeling like we have to do to sort of get out of that. I would like people to just be with themselves, accept themselves for exactly who they are, how they're feeling, what they're thinking right now. And through that practice of acceptance, they will then deepen the connection with themselves and then start to evolve, move through fear, criticism, anxiety, nerves, whatever's coming up. And so that's sort of the yoga piece as I show up in the studio. And then bringing that into the flirt, having it really be that practice of mindfulness, of connection, of observation, like what's happening for you. Or maybe you're really enjoying yourself and you love it and you're making connections. Fantastic. Let's keep going with that. Like you get to amplify all the good as well.
And let's say somebody wants to work one-on-one with you and they say,
Mhm.
listen, I need to get my flirt game on. I
Mhm.
need to be better at this. I want more connection in my life. And I got nothing. Walk us through how you might work with someone.
Usually it's going to start with a little bit of dating strategy as well. They want to up their flirt game because they're looking to start dating again. Maybe they're coming out of a long-term relationship. Maybe they took a break. Maybe they've never dated and have just been single for a long, long time and feel like they're too late or they're the late bloomer. It's sort of like working through all that mindset. Let's work with a little bit of strategy. What are you looking for? What do you want? How do you want to date online, in person? Are we combining the two? What's up? So, starting with a little bit of strategy, giving people that focus so they can have more or less a goal to focus on, something they're working towards. We know where we're going is very, very helpful. So, starting with some dating strategy first, and then bringing in some of the flirt strategy. I'm like, let's role play. Like, we role play together. So let's say, where are we? Are we at a coffee shop? Are we going to a yoga class? What's up? Is there a singles event? Are you on the apps? Are you swiping and making a match? What's happening? Let's role play. Because at the end of the day, I can give you the scripts. I can give you the texts to send, the messages. I can give you the pickup lines. Will you use them? And will they fit your specific situations? And do they feel authentic to you? This is where I need you to show up for yourself. And so working through some of the nerves, just building more understanding for how I frame the flirt as being a practice of connection, showing up for you, seeing it perhaps as an act of service. I love framing the flirt in that way. What if you could share some energy? What if you could put a smile on someone's face? What if you could make them laugh, brighten their day a little bit? Wouldn't that be enough?
So it's no surprise to me
Sometimes.
that dating would be kind of the driver for many people because that is such
Yes.
a sea of vulnerability.
Yes.
And even though flirting in and of itself is not necessarily, per your definition, something that is meant to draw a romantic or sexual connection,
Mhm.
but obviously the people who knock at your door probably with the greatest frequency are the ones who are freaked out. Oh my gosh, I'm dating again. I'm a little bit
Yeah.
older. I've lost my game. And I find myself thinking about this movie Hitch where Will Smith and Kevin James are working together. Will Smith is the
Mhm.
one who is the dating coach, so to speak. And
Mhm.
a pivotal moment in the film is Kevin James starts showing Will Smith his dance moves. And Will Smith's like, no, you can't do that, except for the fact that it was an entirely authentic expression of
Mhm.
Kevin James's character.
Mhm.
And a really important part of the movie is that Will Smith, the coach,
Mhm.
learns that the only way that this guy's going to be able to get his authentic flirt on is by having his style of dance. And one of the things that you just said dovetails perfectly with that idea
Mhm. Oh
is
yeah.
that it has to be an authentic expression of who you are. So you're not just going to say one size fits all. You're getting to know, from what I'm inferring from your statements, is that when you're working with a client, you try to get to know the client and you try to co create and co tailor that flirt so it's an authentic expression of them.
Absolutely, because people crave authenticity, I think, for themselves and others. We're drawn to it. And especially you were talking about just our hyper connected digital world. And a lot of us are dating online. Dating can sometimes become a performance. It's lost its humanness a little bit, where it's
So
just, it
much.
feels like you're disposable, or maybe you're the one disposing of others. You're ghosting if someone did it to me. So here we go. I'm returning the favor kind of thing. And it's like, if we can just bring more connection into the practice and into the process, and ultimately, if you can show up for yourself first and foremost and really just be able to be you. I know, like, that is such a cliche dating advice. Be you, be authentic, right? Be your true self. Well, what does that mean? I hope to give context to those words and to those phrasings and really just empower people to be themselves, knowing that, right, how you show up in dating is how you show up in life. When you can just show up as you and connect in ways that feel authentic to you, it is going to completely change every other aspect of your life.
I think there's something to be said for that, that when we move something through play, there's greater movement. I believe it was one of the greats, Aristotle, perhaps Socrates. I don't recall to whom this is attributable, but one of these great ancient Greek philosophers said something akin to, I can know more by playing with you for an hour than I could by hanging out with you for a year without play. And I think of my own version of play, and that was 2 years of doing improv. Here I was, a grown man with a bunch of other adults who I never met before. And the key objective was to yes and to play. It wasn't necessarily to be funny, although funny things did happen. And of course, some of the great improvs are like Tina Fey or Will Ferrell are like the funniest people in the world, but that's not the point. The point is to reclaim something we lost along the way, and that is play. And one of the things I hear is similar between you and the whole improv is we're going to bring back play.
One of the favorite episodes I did for my podcast was called Improv Your Flirt. And it was with Improv Teacher. And we flirted in this space of play, really using the skills and teachings of improv to help people flirt. Let's approach it from that way as well. Because a lot of what's going to happen when you're in improv is it's yes about connection, but also being present. You got to listen. You got to be able to respond, be curious, make observations, get ready to be vulnerable. I mean, you're doing that in front of even maybe just your troupe, not an audience. You got to be willing to put yourself out there and maybe make a mistake or say something that's not funny and a joke doesn't land. Like it's gonna be okay. I've fumbled the flirt before. Not everyone is a slam dunk, but still ultimately so much fun when I can see someone smile or they start to laugh. And then I get to receive that energy back as well. It's not like this flirt is a self-serving practice. It goes both ways.
You know, I'm totally taken by this idea that on our deathbeds, we regret not taking risks. And one of the things that the flirt does is it's basically a risk. We don't know how the other person will respond. It may go over well. And I'm guessing that your batting average is fairly high. But one of the things I like that you said is that sometimes it goes over like a joke that kind of flops. And any great comedian will tell you that they work their stuff out at the clubs and they see how it lands. And one of the other things that dawns upon me is that we hate failure. We've been trained to avoid it. And the problem with that is we have to fail if we want to move forward. I love several of my great thinkers who've shown up. One of the things that Matt Abrahams out of Stanford Graduate School of Business says, that mistakes are merely missed takes. My friend Bonnie Burnell, my colleague and somebody who's taught me a lot over the years, a great psychologist, said that mistakes are merely tuition. And I love what Sean Hayes says, mistakes make great stories at some point. Guy Kawasaki says, if you want to get good at something, you have to be willing. He's from Hawaii. And one of the things that he'll say is, you got to make ass, which means you got to make an ass out of yourself. And Dory Clark says, failure is merely data. And I love all these ideas because they take all the piss out of what is a prerequisite to any form of learning or building skills. What I'm wondering is, with flirting, the stakes could be a little bit high because you could actually offend somebody. So what is the personal protective equipment that you offer through your coaching so that when they do fall on their face, maybe they just feel like an ass, but at other times, maybe the other person might be offended. How do you equip a client who's learning from you so that they feel more okay with being vulnerable and failure?
Yeah, this is really important and something I learned early on, because the flirt isn't created equal. You know, I'm a gay guy flirting, at least romantically, like with other gay guys, because that's who I'm looking to date. I mean, I kind of flirt with everybody, but I realize if you are in the heterosexual dynamic here of flirting and you're a woman and you're perhaps by yourself and you're approached by a guy and he is like coming on super strong or flirting what feels like really aggressively, it's like, if the guy comes back and he's like, oh, well, I saw this video that Benjamin made and he was like, you know, flirt away, just flirt, flirt, flirt. I'm like, oh my gosh, no. So
that's not the message.
No. And so like, I understand the different dynamics that play out in the flirt. And I hope bringing it back to this point of connection first and making it always about that helps. I know that's not going to be enough though. So I talk about building consent with nonverbal flirting, eye contact, body language, really getting that buy-in that someone is at least interested in perhaps having a conversation with you and having a little bit of in the moment connection. And then being in the present moment so that it's like, this is why the lack of expectations piece, which comes from yoga, is a part of my definition.
Mm-hmm.
If you're coming into the flirt and you see someone, oh my gosh, that woman, hot, I want to get her number. Maybe I even want to sleep with her. That's what you're thinking. How do you think that's going to be received? Like, you got to be mindful of how your flirt may be received and how someone may not want to receive that kind of energy, that connection, or that kind of flirt. And I would even say that's not a flirt because you're going into it with one outcome in mind, with an expectation. And that's bordering on manipulation, where you are now making a connection because you want something from this person. The connection is gone at that point. So bringing it back to connection, being mindful of someone's boundaries, if they're not flirting back with you, if they're not making eye contact with you, if their headphones are in and they're looking away kind of thing, and you just can't get their attention, you got to be mindful if someone is just not open to receive a flirt, all good. They're just not open. It's not personal. It's not rejection.
They're not open for business.
That's what it is.
Leave that person alone.
Yeah. And then when you start to get into it, it's just coming in with very over the top physical compliments right away. How about start with a question? How about start with an introduction or your name, or make an observation about something that's in your surroundings, something that's happening? Is there some music overhead? Are you on the subway or something and someone's wearing like a crazy outfit or something? It's, maybe that's something you could observe and have a quick point of connection about. And then from there, this is very much one of those flirts where it's two strangers meeting for the first time. Then you can go from there and say, hey, like, could I get your number? I'd love to take you for coffee. I just want to see you again so badly. And then you can start to build the flirt from there as you get to know this person. But I think a lot of these themes of boundaries and consent play out when you're dating and when you're in relationships. Just because you're in a long-term relationship with somebody, it's like, how are they feeling? Maybe that is the flirt. Maybe it's a conversation just about what's happening in your life.
I'm sincerely interested in getting to know you.
Yeah, it's not always let me like sort of unbutton a button here on my shirt and show a little more chest hair or something and like wink at you kind of thing. Like, I think that's where people's minds go when it goes to flirting, when we think about flirting. And I'm really trying to demystify that. That could be one aspect of the flirt, perhaps, but in its true form, that is not flirting. That's not a connection.
I heard a very interesting interview once with a lesbian woman who transitioned into becoming a man. She was born female, obviously, transitioning. And one of the things that she described about the process, she was genuinely interested in getting to know the person. And with the introduction of massive doses of testosterone, she suddenly felt just profoundly sexually attracted and directed for sexual connection. And it was a really shocking awakening. And one of the things that I think that you're doing when you're working with a cisborn male, you're hacking into their hormones as messengers and saying, hey, chill out for a second. I know that there's a biological directive for most males to reproduce. That is something that is for the preservation and the continuation of our species. Those are the messengers that are front and center, particularly during adolescence through young adulthood. It's really, really strong, but it continues throughout late adulthood. And one of the things that you're doing here is you're saying, hey, hang on a second. Slow down a minute. Like, those exist is what I'm kind of hearing, but I'm not sure. And there's a whole other series of data available to you. And that is getting to know the person, not just being like Ted from How I Met Your Mother, who just basically hits on everybody. And one of the reasons that show works, and paradoxically, he's played by Neil Patrick Harris, who's actually a gay male and not an uber straight guy that he portrays in the show, which is really, really flexing and interesting to me. But I love the idea of getting cisborn males aware of there's more out there than just that. And I know we know that, but on some levels, hormonally, at times we don't.
Yeah, I mean, and I know this can be where the flirt goes, if you're dating casually or you're just feeling, you know what, I need to hook up or something like that. I get it. Like, that's going to continue to happen. And ultimately, if you want to use the flirt that way, use the skills that way, and it's, consenting parties involved, like, go for it.
By all means.
that's a part of this as well. And the flirt, because in that way, the flirt can also be foreplay and how much fun to flirt in that space as well. But one of my hot takes is I think a lot of men need to learn sexual discipline. And I think they need to recognize how often they objectify. And this goes for all women, I mean, all men, how often they objectify and sexualize people that they then want to sleep with without knowing anything about them, just seeing them for the way they look. And that is quite literally it. And when you are able to start to transcend that mindset and actually see someone for a person, for who they are, for their value, for a connection, for what you could learn from them, it's another part of the flirt that changes your life. It adds so much depth and dimension to your life.
Let's talk about how it's added depth and dimension to your life.
I mean, maybe some of your listeners have heard of the male gaze and how oftentimes our media, our news, so much, our stories, our articles in magazines, newspapers, everywhere is told through the male gaze and really objectifies women. And women, I'm speaking to women for this part, but also I think goes for gay men. Anyone that's dating or attracted to men moves about their lives based on how they are perceived. You're getting dressed in the morning. Ooh, I wonder, like, will a guy find me looking good in this? Ooh, I want to show off, right? Like, I want to look kind of a little bit sexy for the guys out there. You're at the gym. It's sort of like, oh, is he looking at me? Is he checking me out kind of thing? And so we can live our lives based on the male gaze and how we want to be perceived. So it goes both ways. But when I have been able to get out of that, because I used to do it all the time. You'd see someone you think is attractive and you just all of a sudden start to get a little bit nervous. Maybe you're getting a little bit intimidated. You start to think things about them. This is the halo effect. Like, oh, they must be a good person or have a good job or be a good partner or a good lover, all these kinds of things. And you don't even know their name. You know nothing about
we
them.
Make all these assumptions.
So, yes, when you can, God, get away from how you are perceived, how you want to be perceived, and stop seeing people for solely based on their physical appearance and cultivating a connection based only on this very superficial surface level attraction. It deepens your connections. It takes so much pressure off of making connections, so much anxiety and nerves and intimidation. It just brings an element of freedom and more play into it because there's not this element of, like, I want this person to think I'm attractive.
You're speaking to so many functions and dysfunctions of the brain as it is organically. This brain has been unchanged for at least 35,000 years. Some argue that it's been the same for about 100,000 years. And society and our mores and how we treat people have changed vastly. We are the beneficiaries of this brain that is the most complex structure known in the universe. And simultaneously, it can lead us to, as you said, the halo effect and other cognitive biases. The halo effect, for those who aren't familiar, is that when somebody looks good, we make assumptions that they are smarter and more competent and more credible, even though they may not be at all. And there's this imaginary audience when we're getting dressed. We're imagining, how will I be perceived? Because we want so badly to be regarded well. One of the things that is also interesting about you in particular, Benjamin, and I feel a connection with you around it, is I'll state my case before I bring out something I know about you, which is really cool. When I was in graduate school, my first round, I was a bank teller. And as such, I saw 120 people a day. And I thought, how can I make this more interesting? How can I make this a training ground for me? And how can I also make other people's days just a little bit better? What I decided was, if I'm going to see 120 people, can I make 119 of them smile, ideally laugh during the transaction, and still balance at the end of the day? And I know you have a similar training ground. And I was wondering if you could talk about how at work you might use your flirt and how it might make people's day and how it might also improve your abilities to flirt.
Yes, I'm the flirt coach and I create lots of content on flirting and dating and have my podcast and I teach yoga, but I also work part-time at Trader Joe's, which for anyone internationally is a very popular grocery chain here in the States, known for our customer service and specifically being the flirtiest grocery store probably in the world. There is elements to the Trader Joe's shopping experience that you will not find anywhere else. One example, there are no self-checkouts at Trader Joe's. You will be talking to an actual real life human being as you exit the store. Like, that's how this works. And so when I'm on register, it's like sometimes I have to assess my own energy as well. And this is part of the flirt. You're not getting flirty Benjamin every transaction. Sometimes I'm a little tired, but for the most part, I do try and just ask questions to make observations. And so, like yesterday, I had a guy in my line getting some groceries and a few things of flowers. And I started to ring him up. He's like, oh, actually, could you, make these flowers a separate transaction? They're for my wife. I want it to be a surprise. And I was like, oh. So then I'm asking him, like, how long have you been with your wife? Or is there a surprise? Is there an occasion? And he's like, oh, no, just because we've been married for 44 years. And I was like, oh my gosh. So now I'm like asking him questions like, can I ask you, what's the secret? Because I had a feeling that having him talk about his wife would make him very happy. And it did. And he started to smile. And so we had a moment there and we're laughing. And then I used my wow customer service card for that hour and threw in an extra bouquet of flowers and, send him on about his way. Thank you so much. Hope your wife enjoys the flowers. Hope to see you again soon in the store. And it was just a really lovely moment. In that moment, I used the flirt to learn something. I really just became curious, asking questions. And it wasn't flirty. I wasn't giving this guy compliments.
100%.
That wasn't what it was about at all. I'm also on the clock. I'm at the register. That's not what I'm going to do.
It would be utterly inappropriate. And of course we weren't doing that.
Completely, but very friendly, curious, asking questions, complimenting in some ways, like, this is so amazing. You're doing this surprise gift for your wife kind of thing. So you can compliment actions as well. That could be part of it. And did this guy think I was flirting with him? Probably not. But did it have all the elements of the flirt? Was it an authentic expression of interest in the present moment without expectations with the purpose of making a connection? I would say it was. And so it classifies as a flirt in my book.
I listen to you talk about that and just kind of our shared stories of me as a bank teller trying to bring people up and have a real connection during the transaction, not just like cashing the check or depositing whatever, blah, blah, blah. I wanted it to be a real human connection every time. And no, I did not wish to hook up with these people in any way, shape, or form. But what a better way to ride the merry-go-round. This merry-go-round called life. Imagine if we're just looking forward and not enjoying it. What if we instead, while we're on that merry-go-round, wave at people and smile and connect and have fun and enjoy this life while we're living? It's such a squandered opportunity to be blank and blah and no conversation and nothing real. And by the way, Trader Joe's, I have no professional affiliation with them whatsoever, but I don't know anybody who merely likes Trader Joe's. Everybody loves Trader Joe's because it's awesome. And one of the things that I actually do with this is kind of interesting is when I'm working with somebody who's socially anxious, one of the first things I'll ask people to do as a homework assignment, because everybody in my area, everybody shops at Trader Joe's in my area. I don't know anybody who doesn't. I say when you're checking out, regardless of the grocery store, but I ask them to ask the person at the checkout counter, hey, what's a product you love here that I might have missed? That is one of the things that I have them do because it's low bid. Virtually any Trader Joe's checker will list 1 to 3 things, and it's a conversation starter.
Absolutely.
Does it lead to a romantic connection? Obviously not. Is this something I would recommend to people who are married, who are shut down? 100%. Is it going to, in any way, shape, or form, violate the marriage? No. So I'm wondering, how does that land with you, that idea?
I love it. I love it when customers ask me questions. It doesn't always happen, but sometimes it does. And it's refreshing. It'll even catch me off guard sometimes where they are now, maybe they're initiating the conversation, asking me how my day is. Or we are all wearing our name tags when they use my name in a sentence, like, thank you, Benjamin, or something like that.
Right.
It's just incredible. But I love this exercise that you give as it's a bid for connection, right? Very low bid, not
low
stakes. For the low stakes. It's not about, you're not going to get rejected or turned down. But for the person that's socially anxious or has a lot of social anxiety, it's probably very difficult. But we're going to be very friendly and answer the question. And I think that can be a great place for this practice of connection of the flirt to start, is through questions. That's a lot of what I do at the register. And then I can bring in, I play with my voice a lot and my pitch and my range and my hand motions. And of course, I'll talk about different products or maybe ask what's for dinner. It's like we sell a lot of taco shells and taco seasoning and all that stuff on Tuesdays, right? Like Taco Tuesday, here we go. Like I see the bell peppers and the onions and the garlic and the sauce and all the things. I'm like, oh, okay, tell me about your taco. I want to know. Or maybe we'll have, sort of like, what are you putting on it kind of thing, or getting into a taco debate or something like that. It's so much fun. And I've learned so much about other people, but at the same time, learned a lot about myself, which is one of the most fun parts of the flirt is you get to learn about yourself too. You get to talk about your interests and passions and things that you like and enjoy, and maybe rediscover things like, gosh, I haven't been hiking in a long time, or something like that. And you're talking about it and you're like, what's a good trail? I'd like to get back out this weekend. Where should I go?
That is such an important point. The byproduct of that transaction, so to speak, that conversation, it's not just transactional, is something creative, new, and has never happened before and will never happen again. In as much as our unique thumbprints and DNA, this transaction that happens, there may be some that are similar, but there's no exact replications in nature. I was just recently told that even atoms are different from one another on some level, which is crazy. Wow. But the idea that a conversation would spark and reinvigorate your interest in hiking is so true. I was talking with the dean of the School of Design at Stanford, Jeremy Utley, who is been on the podcast, and he was talking about the idea that the more ideas we have, the more creative we can get. And by being someone who's engaging people as they're leaving on Taco Tuesdays and talking about how they do tacos, you may learn of an ingredient that changes your life, so to speak. And I hate the idea of squandering these opportunities of talking to people. And one of the things I hear about New Yorkers is that they're not in their cars. They're walking down the street, and they were actually more likely to be engageable, even though they have this reputation as being cold and surly. They're not. There are many who are really very happy to talk to you, very much the way people who talk on airplanes when you're sitting next to somebody. You can have a really, really good conversation because you're never going to see this person again. Yeah. And sometimes it actually becomes a friendship of some kind. I actually know somebody who ended up marrying somebody who he met on an airplane, but
you never know. You truly never know.
But sometimes we can become unburdened and sharing something because there's no replacing face-to-face connection. We have more in common with each other than we think. The media will tell us that we are fractured and divided. If we really get down to it, we are very similar. And I think that we can help the fracture with Flirt. Just getting back to play, coming back to play. Hey, you want to play?
Yeah, I mean, when you can come into it without those expectations, see a person for who they are and get to know them on that level, not what they look like or what they could do for you, having the flirt be this transactional practice, that's not what this is about at all. I just hope to bring just more humanness and more connection into just our day-to-day lives. I'm sure people listening to this right now that are feeling lonely and they're isolating and they're withdrawn and they're depressed and they're anxious and they're living their lives from this place of fear. I'm not good enough. They're not putting themselves out there to take risks and be vulnerable, just maybe going about their daily lives, motion, like through the motions kind of thing. And that was very much me and part of my story. My mental health, I don't really talk about a ton. I have opened about it some, but depression has been a huge part of my story. And it's a big reason why I do what I do. I just hope to help people a little bit feel less depressed. And I know there's lots of ways to address depression. I think connection is one of them and will always be one of them and should be one of them.
So important. And I am fairly open about my history of depression, anxiety, ADHD, the whole bit. I don't just treat these things. I've walked through them. And I think it makes me better at walking with people who are actually dealing with them because I know the terrain really well. In as much as my best foreign language teachers have not been from the country that represented that language. They've been people who've acquired the language themselves, which seems very similar. I'm really glad that you've cracked this code and that you've found this thing that has been helpful to so many people, but has also been helpful to you, that you have benefited from the flirt, that you feel more alive while you're alive. And I think it's one of the ways that we can be excellent to each other. It's not necessarily just for cultivating romance. It's funny. I remember when I was on the California AIDS ride, as it was a bike ride from San Francisco to LA, I was one of the few straight men. There were some of us. And on the Kinsey scale, I'm about as straight as you get. But I've always loved the company of gay men because they're willing to talk about their feelings a lot more than
my straight brethren on average, with all due respect. One of the things that I would ask, though, I did it alone. I had nobody to ride with. But I always asked people the same kind of big question as an opener, because I knew everybody had a different reason for why they were doing the ride. I had a cat who had FIV, which is basically feline immunodeficiency virus. And it broke my heart, man. It caused me to feel a real kind of solidarity with people who were struggling with HIV and its concomitant diseases. So I would always ask people, what compelled you to do the ride? An open question. That was just my blanket, rubber stamp question. And it was a good one. And everybody had a different reason for why they were doing the ride.
Yeah.
Some had it themselves. Some were doing it for somebody else. For the socially anxious, and I am in many ways a recovering anxious and socially anxious, awkward person, having a good question that pretty much relates to everybody is, I think, very helpful. And for me, that worked. I ended up with a lot of really cool friends from that ride. What are your thoughts on that in terms of formulating a good question?
It's a great strategy. It gives people, no matter the context, if you're on this ride or you're looking to flirt and date, maybe sort of like that's where you're taking the flirt. It's still about connection. And so if you give yourself something to open, an introduction, even a pickup line or something like that, just have a few to go to. I think it can really help if you are unsure what to say or how to get things started. If you feel like you have to nail the first impression, you're having some anxiety. Yeah, having some go-to lines can be really helpful. You don't have to reinvent the wheel every time. And I think this is a good example of that. That was a very relevant and topical question to this group. I'm sure you got into the realm of storytelling with that. It's not a
100%.
yes or no question. You're not talking about the weather. It's not something that sort of, maybe is to forget tomorrow. Now someone gets to bring you into their world a little bit. Yes, you're being vulnerable. And I'm sure a lot of follow-up questions came from that. It became a conversation. It wasn't just this one question and answer. Yeah, so I think that's a great one.
Yeah, one of my guests, Kalina Silverman, came up with a deck of what she calls big talk cards, where, to your point, talking about the weather, it could be an opener. It could be a broaching subject to something greater, but oftentimes it's not. Obviously, if you start out with a massive question, like, what do you hope to do before you die? I mean, that's a great big talk question, but opening with that would put somebody off. You might want to build up to that. But is there anything I should have asked but haven't yet asked?
I think we really talked about the framework, what flirting is, talked about a lot of the anxieties that and fears that can come up for people, especially that fear of rejection, this idea of being perceived and just being more authentic and how that prevents us oftentimes from being authentic. Got to share some about myself. Yeah, been a really wonderful and fun conversation that I hope your listeners just take value from and get out there and flirt a little bit.
I agree. And I'm going to say that being lonely can hurt more than rejection. Yeah. So I think it's worth the risk. Just know that we are wired to avoid rejection. Rejection feels in our brains like physical pain. At least it lights up the same pain centers. Yeah. And one of the jobs in this life is to be willing to deal with that and suffer the pain for the sake of something greater. You're helping with that. Glad that you've got a podcast that you've got out there that you're putting out there. So you're spreading more of the seeds, kind of the Johnny Appleseed of flirting. And I'm going to ask you my miracle question to close.
Okay.
Benjamin, if you had the magical powers to confer upon all humanity one insight or skill that would dramatically improve the quality of life of the individual, but since we are all connected, would improve the lives of those around them, what would that skill or insight be? And how do you imagine it would impact the individual as well as those around them?
That's a good question. I feel like what's coming to mind is just if people could believe in themselves more and their potential and their capabilities. I think often, and this is very much true for me, as we feel like we're not good enough, or I hear a lot of this from daters is, they don't feel like they're deserving of love, or that love, has looked this one way their whole life. And so they don't deserve more. And so I hope even with the flirt that people can believe in themselves and just feel confident. Yes. Empowered. Yes. But just have so much compassion and patience and love for themselves that they deserve to just have a great life and to be happy and to connect. And it's not always going to be easy. Yeah, rejection is going to happen. It's a part of life. I like to say rejection is clarity. I get to redirect my energy and attention into other things, other people, back to myself, just to have people believe in themselves.
I love that. And one of the things I heard recently as a way to just kind of reconceptualize rejection is imagine it's a letter that was sent to the wrong address. Oh, I just need to send it to the right address. Right. I thought that was a really good one. And, Susan Jeffers wrote a book whose title changed my life. I'm embarrassed to say I haven't read the book, but it's called Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway. And I feel like everything you're talking about is related to that.
Yeah, I mean, you can work through this fear with the flirt, fear of being seen, fear of being perceived, fear of rejection or putting yourself out there, fear of vulnerability. You start to work through that fear in the flirt. Well, now all of a sudden, maybe you're changing careers like I did, or asking for the raise or the promotion, or you're standing up to friends or family that, haven't been respecting your boundaries and then here you are fearful of hurting them, perhaps. So allow this process of the flirt to the things you're working through, you then get to bring into every other part of your life.
And to restate what should be obvious by now, because we've said it, it's not about violating anybody's boundaries. It's in many ways both a thoughtful and playful flirt that you seem to be endorsing. So I just can't thank you enough. This has been so much fun, Benjamin, to hang with you and to just feel your vitality all the way across the country, since we are 3,000 miles apart, but it's as if there's no distance at all.
This has been so wonderful. I thank you for just allowing me to share more about myself, my story, and the flirt with everyone listening. Thank you.
Right on.
This is Dr. Adam Dorsey thanking you for listening to Super Psyched. If you know anyone who might like it or who might benefit from listening, share it. And if you like the episode, please hit subscribe.